good morning. This is D, and welcome to Uneven Live. I'm getting things situated here and got up and moving. We made sure that we had people online in the audience today because we've had that problem before with our recording software. Today we have people online. They've already let me know they're here and they can see me, even though to them my image is blurry. The good news is the recording of my image I know is coming through pretty clear because it records separately. So that's kind of nice. How's everybody doing? I'm going to start off serious for a little bit first, and then I'll try to move into some more levity as we move along. But I do have a few things I want to talk about today. Of course, we do have our chat room open for those who are here in the audience from our community at Uneven. And for those who want to come visit us, it's uneven.life. Again, it's uneven.life. Please come check out our community. We are still free through the end of January, although we will be announcing our rates that'll kick in on February 1st. I've written that post for those people in the community. I just haven't posted it in the community yet. It'll probably be out tomorrow for all that information. So just wanted to let you know. But that'll be coming out. But right now, if you want to join, you still have the rest of the month totally free. So come check us out and see what you think. We are currently at, I want to say this doesn't really count. I'm going to send a post out later that we have hit our 200 mark. And I was about to do that, but then we lost one person, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And so we dropped back down to 199. So no celebration yet. We're not officially at 200. I will post that in our community when we hit that number and stay at that number, but we are almost at 200, and that is pretty amazing so far. I know we'll lose a good chunk of that when we go to paid because some of those people did visit our site and may not have come back and probably won't do the paid service. And that was part of the plan. And we knew that, but still, it's just great to have so many people online, so much activity going on here, so many conversations. We've added new spaces for those out there who are thinking about coming out. We've just added, we already have spaces for benzos. We already have, these are dedicated spaces for talking about all things related to benzodiazepines. We have spaces for antidepressants. I just added a space for GABA meds, which is for gabapentin and pregabalin. And I added another major space for, what's the most recent one? Oh, COVID. For COVID, because we're seeing so much crossover and neurological complications coming from COVID, from long COVID, from maybe the COVID vaccine, we're not sure. And so we're seeing a lot of complications happening too. So those are options and places where we can discuss information, share research. Research is already being shared in that area on those different topics. I also did add a new gratitude space on January 1st, and so that's a place for all of us to be able to add our gratitudes, things we're grateful for throughout the rest of the year, and go in and read other people's gratitudes. And people have already been using that, and I think that's great. So I'm really excited. Anyway, please come check us out at Uneven. We would love to see you if you're not already here. And I think that's enough on that topic. I'm going to move on. Many of you know a lot of Los Angeles is on fire right now, Pacific Palisades, Pasadena, other areas too. I used to spend a lot of time out there when I was a screenwriter. And I have a really good friend who lives in Pacific Palisades. We've been texting with her. And she, her school, high school just burned down. And both her grandmother's house and her aunt and uncle's house have burned down. She is safe right now and her family is safe, but boy, that hits close to home and that's pretty scary. And I know they're having trouble getting enough water to fight the fire. I know the winds have been horrific. I know the fire departments there are so spread so thin. It's just, and it's moving so fast. So I just want to say our thoughts and our prayers go out to everybody in LA right now for all that they're going through. It's been really, really tough. And I just wanted to throw that out there and just let you all know who are in those situations that we're thinking of you and we care. So you're on our minds. I do want to talk, move on to a couple things that have come up on the site recently. One thing I love about our community at uneven.life is that I get a lot of ideas. I get a lot of different directions to go because so many amazing discussions are happening on there just left and right. And I'm really loving that. I'm going to take this earbud out because there's nobody else on but me. So I don't have to listen for anybody. I know my voice is coming through, so I don't have to keep the earbud in. But we've had a lot going on and a lot of things that we directions I may have taken at the beginning and that our other leadership team has taken as they've joined in. Some of that has shifted. Some of that has stayed the same. Our core values and the core that we built this on has stayed the same. And I'm going to talk about a couple of those things today, and also about some mental processes that are going on that came up in conversation on site too, about where our minds are going. And we've had a lot of people joining in lately and a lot of new people coming on the site. It blows my mind because I love this, because we're getting pretty much everybody coming in right now is word of mouth. I still, like I said, initially I advertised through my podcast and sent out an email to my mailing list from Easing Anxiety. But since then, there's been no promotion. So we're growing at a pretty steady rate without doing any promotion. And once we start charging and getting some revenue coming in, which will happen here February 1st, and like I said, I know we'll lose some members as we do that, but hopefully not too many. And then we'll keep growing from there. But once we do that, we can actually have some funds to not only keep adding infrastructure and adding new spaces and bringing on more people to help out, but we also have funds to help promote and help advertise and reach new audiences that we haven't reached yet. And I think that's really important, because we are open to working with people who aren't just benzodiazepine, even though that's the world I came from, but general anxiety has always been something I've worked with our Easing Anxiety group. Of course, we now have done the antidepressants, and that's a huge area that we're really trying to grow, and we're trying to start a live stream on that pretty soon. We are also, like I mentioned, adding some of the gabapentin, pregabalin issues, COVID. So we're really branching out into all these areas, and it's not like we're trying to grow too fast in too many areas. It's just that most of the members on our site are also struggling with these other things. A lot of people on benzos are also struggling with antidepressants. A lot of people on antidepressants and benzos are also struggling with GABA medication. Many of them are also struggling with COVID, either complications from COVID. So we opened these spaces because these individuals are struggling with all these different things. And it was nice to have spaces where people can talk about those specifically. And also, if people don't want to see information about those spaces, it's really easy to unjoin the space and you won't see those. And I think that's really good. And I don't know. I think we have the right direction, and adding more spaces has been good. But I just want to let people know that everybody's welcome here. Anybody who's struggling with any kind of mental health difficulties, or just life in general, or medication caused or virus caused, we're really glad to have you here. So 2 things I want to talk about. One is, I want to mention in this regard about a space we have here, and this has come up in conversation lately. And we have an opinion space. It's a space, I thought of it a while back when before I launched, did the soft launch in October. I had this thought that with all the divisiveness on all these different ideas going on in our society, I was getting really tired of not being able to have open and honest conversations about things because we're too afraid we're going to offend somebody. And that really bothered me, because I felt like the lack of conversation was not helping us. Although I held my tongue for a long time, and I'm one of these people that has done that. And so I get that. The Benzo Free podcast I've run for 5.5 years now, and I've kept that almost entirely apolitical because it just wasn't the right place for it. But also, it would alienate. It could alienate, no matter which side I go on, it will alienate half my audience. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to alienate somebody who might get benefit from the podcast. It just made no sense. There wasn't any reason for it. When I launched the Uneven podcast, I realized, okay, I'm a little bit more free to talk about some things, but still I try to keep it very moderate and centrist, because honestly, that's where I'm at. I'm at my core a centrist. I'm more of a moderate. I've leaned different directions, different times, but most of the time I really think we need to be able to have conversations and get along about things, and not just about politics, but also about especially things that are related to these medications, that are related to psychiatric complications, things about psychiatry, things about big pharma. That's a great topic for us to talk about, and the good and the bad, and where are we going with all that, about corruption with that, and about the FDA and federal agencies and what they're doing, and are they really doing good for the people, or is it more problems going on? And anything related to psychiatry, anything related to alternative methods of recovery. Some of those are controversial, but more functional medicine, or alternative medicines like acupuncture and different therapies. And I mean, I could go on, and I'm just not pulling them off the top of my head. But all these things can be controversial, and it's so easy to wind up in controversial topics. So when I built Uneven, I had a couple of thoughts. One is I didn't know how to draw the line or where to draw the line of what's okay and not okay. Two, I didn't want to draw a line if I didn't have to. I wanted to let people express themselves freely. And that is at the foundation of what we created. And number three, I even wanted to have some place where we could encourage people to have kind, respectful conversations about controversial topics. And so I created a space called Opinion. I thought it was a good name for it, just called Opinion. This is where our opinions are, because all these things are opinions. Heck, all these things that I come out and say, I believe in this and this, it's still my opinion that I believe in that. And I think we need to keep that in mind, but I called it the Opinion Space. And we created it. Now, when I created that, I knew it would cause some controversy. It's funny. I thought it was very ironic that within the opinion space, we are talking about whether or not the opinion space should exist. I just think that's kind of ironic when you think about it. But the thing I couldn't ignore, and I had to take into account, is that we have a very sensitive population. This is not derogatory. This is not meant to harm anybody or put anybody down, because I'm speaking of myself as much as anybody. I was extremely sensitive coming off benzodiazepines. We are chemically sensitized because of these drugs. And so like I mentioned before, for 5 years, I didn't even watch the news because it was too triggering for me. And a lot of us are in that state. And I think for that reason, a lot of support sites supporting benzodiazepines, antidepressants, and other medications have chosen to be more restrictive in what people can share. And they've learned as they've gone along, and they are probably doing the right thing for their audience. I'm not questioning what any other group is doing. But I saw that most of the other groups were doing that, and I didn't want to do that. It was a personal choice more than anything else. But I thought if most of the groups are doing this, then maybe there's room for somebody who's not doing that. Maybe there's room for a place where we say, we're not going to create a safe space. And I came up with a term called a friendly space. And I've talked about this a little before on the podcast. When we were going through the guidelines, I mentioned, I had an episode a few episodes back, and we went through the guidelines, and I talked about friendly spaces and safe spaces. And basically it means that you might be offended here. You might be triggered, and some of the stuff you say might be difficult to hear. And I understand that. But I don't know if it's the smartest thing, at least for us on this site, to suppress that. I just don't believe in that. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in freedom of expression. I believe we should have the right on all sides of the spectrum to share our views here, as long as you do that from a place of kindness and respect. It sounds naive. It sounds maybe even ignorant to some people, and that's okay. But damn it if I'm not going to give it a try, because I don't think less conversation is the answer to what's going on. I think more is. That's that simple. It's that simple. I'm not saying we're going to fix the problem, but I do believe it starts with open and honest conversations between two people, between three people, between five people. And if we can facilitate that and allow a place for that, then I'm all for that. That being said, yes, part of our population is very sensitive to these topics. And that is why we have spaces. Opinion is a space, meaning you can join this space and see its content, or you can not join or unjoin this space and not see its content, not even be notified of new content in this space. And that's how we set it up. And I thought that was a pretty good setup. Now, recently we've had some people disagree with us, and I love that. I love it that people disagreed, because again, that's why I have this space. So that, I mean, it's so funny that within the opinion space, we have people disagreeing for the reasons and how the opinion space is run. And I'm going, but this is exactly why we have an opinion space, because this is where we want to discuss things about. It's this loop, and it's crazy. And anyway, so that's what happens. But it was a really healthy conversation. Unfortunately, we did lose one member. One member decided it was too much, and they decided to leave. I'm very sorry for that. I tried to reach out and try to let them know that I'm happy to have one-on-one conversation or whatever. But I also totally respect their reason for leaving, and I respect their right to. In fact, I've mentioned before on our site that if anybody doesn't like what we do or doesn't agree with it or doesn't feel comfortable here, let me know. I'm more than happy to help you find a place where you might fit in better. There are a lot of organizations out there, and wonderful organizations that are doing excellent work and been at this far longer than I have. I mean, I've been at the whole podcast and the community for a long time. I've been at this for years, about 10 years now. But as far as running a membership site, yeah, I'll admit I'm new at this. I just started this. And so these other leaders of the other groups may know things that I haven't figured out, or maybe I'm trying something new that might also work. I'm hoping it's the latter. I'm hoping that's the direction this goes. And so far, I think it is, because this was the first conversation on the opinion site in 3.5 months that was even remotely, I think, difficult. People have been very respectful. I've been very pleased with how people have treated each other in this space. We've had disagreements. We've talked about disagreeing things, even talked a little politics, which is what came up recently. But people have been treating each other with respect. And I have to say right now, here and there, and I even mentioned this to one of my friends online just recently, who's actually listening to this right now, that I have already learned. I've already learned some things from different viewpoints on an issue that I have not been as exposed to, because we are all in these holes of confirmation bias based on media we choose and see. You know, we're all kind of in that pigeonhole. And so I have already had my influences, my outlook widened just because of what we're doing here. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that we have people on our site. And one of the questions we asked on Uneven was, you know, politically, where do you lean? Left, right, far left, far left. And it was across the board. And I could not have been happier. That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted people from all different ideologies and thoughts and stuff to be able to get together. And what's great is we are all communing on this one overall problem, which is the medication or anxiety or a psychiatric difficulty, whatever it is. But we're all communing over that. And that's where we become friends. And this is what I loved about the podcast. I've mentioned this before, and I think we're doing that some here, is that I got to meet people with zero pretense. On the podcast, people would write into me. I know nothing about them. Sometimes I didn't even know their gender if I couldn't figure it out by name. Not that that was important. I didn't know their race. I didn't know their background. I sometimes didn't even know the country they were in. I didn't know their belief system. But I did know they were struggling with benzos. And we could talk about that. And we could build a relationship about that. And we could just build on that and create a friendship. And that happened time after time after time. And I loved that because I met so many people from so many walks of life who have only enriched my life because of that. And what I wanted to do was to carry that over here. So even though we are allowing a space where we can have these conversations, this is not how we're meeting each other initially. Most of us are meeting us in the open, general spaces when we get in here. We're meeting people through these conversations. And then if we want to also talk about something slightly more controversial, we have a space for that. And only those who want to be part of that can go join that. And I think that was a good idea. I still believe that was a good idea. I know not everybody will agree with me, and they are welcome to come over to that space and tell me they don't agree with me. That's okay. And it's not always easy for me to hear that stuff. I get worked up when I see things I don't agree with sometimes, and some things people say. But I also know I need to let that in. I need to be willing to listen. I need to be willing to hear all sides. And boy, if all of us did that, just think where we'd be. So if us here at Uneven can help that a little bit and facilitate that a little bit in some way, then awesome. That would be awesome. So just giving you that feedback. We have an opinion space. And not only that, but in the general space as a whole, we don't have trigger warnings per se. people can talk about symptoms. And this is the other factor that came up that I wanted to tack on too. So that was about the opinion space and talking about actually intentional controversial topics, which people can take to that space and talk about. But just in our audience overall, in our membership overall, it was interesting how many people have come in and said, oh, can I talk about my symptoms? Because they couldn't in previous support groups. I thought that was surprising that people can't talk about their symptoms in a support group, because I'm not sure why there's a support group for that. But I get how that could be triggering to some people. But my constant answer is always, absolutely. You're welcome to talk about where you are. You're welcome to talk about your hardships. You're welcome to talk about your symptoms. Might these be triggering for some people? Yes. And I understand that. But I believe, from my experience after doing a podcast in this environment for 5.5, almost 6 years now, about almost 6 years, I believe at least what we can do here, what I can do, that I can do more good by having a place where people can connect over those hardships than protecting people from it. Maybe that's the best way to say it. Meaning that I believe there's more good created by people connecting over what they're going through. When somebody writes and says, I'm having, depersonalization, derealization right now, and I can't focus, I can't figure things out, I'm not sure exactly even where I am sometime, and this is really driving me mad, and I'm going crazy. And sometimes somebody's going to read that and think, oh my God, that's me, or that's going to be me, and they get triggered. But also, sometimes people see that and go, oh my God, that's me. I have that exact symptom. How are you dealing with that? How's that working? I feel validated. I feel like this makes sense. I feel like somebody else knows what I'm going through. That's what we're doing at Uneven. And that's where I think the big gains are. I think the big gains are in that area. And what's great about it is, if that's not what works for you and you're too triggered in our group, tons of groups out there. And like I said, we will be more than happy to help you find one. I'm not trying to hang on to anybody or keep anybody here against their will. It's the last thing I would do. I want people that come here who want to be here because of what we're doing. We're different. We try to encourage freedom of expression, but we also try to produce happy things too, and levity. We have a lot of spaces, a smile space. We have a relaxed space. We have all these spaces that are also producing more balance and more positive things. And we do focus a lot of our live streams on positive things and solutions and what you can do. But I truly believe that connection that happens from sharing our experiences is critical. It's critical. And we're going to support that. We're going to continue to support that, and we're going to continue to welcome people to come in and share their stories, share their experiences with others, so other people can hear those and say, oh my God, that's me. How did you deal with that? How are you dealing with it? Where do we go from here? Have you figured out any solutions? Have you found this to help? That's where those conversations come from. And these conversations are happening almost minute now of every day on our site. It's been crazy, and it's been wonderful, and it's been beautiful. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. So that's enough on that. I wanted to talk a little bit about one more thing before we sign off here. And of course, again, I know the chat room right now is very quiet. It's okay. I know some of you are listening to me ramble on, as I do so often. My hat was too high. It looked like this. That's not good. Okay, I'm bringing my hat down. Don't worry. For those of you who are just listening to this and not on video, not a lot going on video. It's just a talking head right now. Michael wrote in and said, we're hanging on every word. I love that, man. That is a good man, Michael. Man, he's one of our contributors on our site and part of our advisory board. And Michael is one of those people who I did not know before I started this site, but who has completely enriched my life since I met him. So thank you, Michael. And that has happened time and time and time and time again with all these people on our site. I am just so blessed to have so many amazing people at Uneven who I call my friends. So thank you all. Anyway, moving on before I get too teary on things, which I do sometimes. We recently had somebody talking up in a And one of the sites, one of the spaces, conversations came up, and I was working one-on-one with somebody, but this person was really struggling with the loop. With the loop is a good way to call it. It's that negative spiral of thoughts, and these are extremely common coming off benzodiazepines, antidepressants, and other drugs. I know it's extremely common in just severe anxiety states, severe depression. People have these all the time, but it is something that so many of us deal with on our site. So many of us deal with it in the community. Lisa said you're oh, thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you too, Lisa. Thank you, guys. See, everybody's so nice. See what I mean? I love this. If you create a space of kindness, you attract people of kindness, and people treat each other. Why is that so hard to do? I don't know. Anyway, but I'm so happy to see that from other people. We are constantly lifting each other up on this site, constantly, and that just. I love that. And I am constantly being lifted up by the people on the site. So that's great. Back to this person. And I wanted to mention that there's this pattern. And I could see the pattern when I was talking with this person, this pattern, because I would get this response back. I would make suggestions. And this person goes, what do I do? What do I do? And was constantly asking me, what do I do? How do I get out of this loop? How do I get my mind to stop doing this? How do I stop thinking negative? And I recognize that loop because I've had that loop many times. And I've seen that in many other people. I've worked with counselors on that loop, on the rumination, on the looping thoughts. We know what it is. And I could see the processing even in this person's mind as we were working through it. And I noticed the repeated feedback was typically, I would suggest something. And this person would be saying back something to the regards of, yeah, but I hear you, but well, that's not going to work for me because everything had an automatic response of, yeah, but, meaning that's not going to work for me. No, that ain't going to work for me. No, this won't work for me. No. And I've seen this because I grew up with this. I grew up with this mindset. I grew up with this loop. I had it. I grew up with a mom that had it. And I saw it. And we even talked about this in one of our groups this week, one of our live streams, about this loop and where we get caught in it, because we say to ourselves we want to hear the positive information. We say to ourselves that we're looking for an answer. And yet our minds are actually have a wall. They built a wall between us and that positive information. They built this wall. I think back to Pink Floyd, The Wall. I can't help it, because that's one of my all-time favorite albums. But because it's the same kind of thing. We built up this wall. We built up this wall to say, I'm not going to let anything in that can hurt me. Oh, and by the way, I'm also not going to let anything in, period. We say we want the good things, and we think to ourselves we do, but everything that comes in, we have a reason why it won't work without ever trying it. We have reasons for all these things every time. I see this in counseling all the time. I've read some counseling books. I'm not a counselor. I'll admit that right front, but I've been through this. And cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT is actually an excellent form, an excellent treatment, in my opinion, and proven in science. It's actually one of the most researched types of psychiatric care, of psychological care, I guess is the correct term, of psychological care, and with some of the best evidence. And this is one of those mindsets that it's very good at working at. This is where counselors come in really helpful for this type of thing. But it's so interesting when I was talking to this person, it was really interesting for me to see almost the mental gears working and to see it happening as I'm talking, as I keep giving this person suggestions and they keep shooting me down saying why those won't work. And I realized halfway through that nothing I say is going to help. Absolutely nothing I say. But mostly I think this person just wanted to be heard, wanted me to listen, wanted me to sympathize and empathize with what this person was going through. It wasn't so much providing a solution. I come from that, that kind of solution where we fix things and we go in, and I remember that part of me, but sometimes that's not the job. Sometimes the job is just to listen. But also from the other aspect, it's also good to start to see those patterns in ourselves. And I call it arguing for our limitations. I'm not saying I created this. I think it's actually a psychological term. I think it's actually part of maybe CBT or something, but it's called arguing for your limitations. It means that you are going to argue with the person or the book or the video or whatever it is you're getting your information from in front of you. Constantly, you're going to argue for the status quo, for where you are, for your limitations, for your current state. You're not going to let that change come in. You are constantly arguing for how things are now. And I know this so well because I was an expert at this. Still am somewhat times. And I've done this in conversations. I noticed in my own family. And I mentioned this before. My mom was not always a happy person. Loved my mom to death, but we had our own conflicts and problems, and she had some issues. And often on our calls after I left home, and I would call her, a few times each week. Often on the calls, it always would start out with how horrible your day is. My mom would say, "Oh, well, this is happening," and I would come back and say, "Well, you you should hear what's happening on my neck of the woods. I'm having this and this," and then she would respond and go, "Well, really bad, yeah, but over here, it was a game. It was a game. We were competing. It was the disadvantaged Olympics or something. I've heard that someplace somewhere, but that was it. I was caught in this pattern of this contest of whose life was worse right now. And I started seeing that pattern. And eventually I started stopping that pattern. I decided to stop playing. And after a while, I would talk to my mom and I would say, and she would tell me about this is happening and this is happening. I would say, "Oh, that's really hard. I'm so sorry, Mom." And that would be it. I didn't say what was happening bad on my end. I might share some good things, but I didn't try to compete. What I was amazed was that conversation takes two people. And my mom stopped losing interest in it after a while. And she wasn't quite as negative as she used to be. Only because I was a little less negative. I was feeding that cycle. And it helped. It and many other things helped improve our communication over the years. It never got great, but it got a little better as we moved along. But I do think we need to analyze ourselves and sometimes look at ourselves, and especially when we have a chemically induced rumination cycle or looping thought cycle, which so many of us do coming off some of these psychiatric medications. I think we need to look at ourselves and say, am I doing something like that? There's a whole list of things in CBT about, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I've read so many books, but it's been a while. But they're the, not myths, but it's the bad thinking things. That's a really terrible term for it because I know they have a much more professional term. But it's I don't know. Maybe somebody in the chat room will tell me what I'm trying to think of. But it's all those improper thought patterns that we get caught in. And it's identifying those and seeing those. And that's what I love about CBT is it helps to, there we go. See, I love the people in my organization. Jen just piped in and said, cognitive distortions are thinking errors. Thank you, Jen. See, I can get caught in my head here and I can say it on the conversation and somebody is going to help me out. And I am very grateful for that. Thank you. But cognitive distortions is a perfect term. But yes, it's these thought patterns that are not beneficial to us, are not healthy for us. And we get caught in those. And one of those is these ruminating, these looping thoughts of negativity. And we, at some point, argue for our limitations. We argue for these. We start to, we get even mad at people who try to challenge those. And it's something to notice. I'm not a counselor. I'm not officially trained in this or CBT, but I'm just saying maybe it's something to think about. If you're caught in that negativity, if you're caught in that downward spiral of my life is so horrible right now, nothing ever is going to be good, and you can't let any positivity in, not even the slightest thing. You can't even get out of the bed and go take a walk. Not because you have physical limitations, because your mind won't let you. Maybe it's good to start to look at those patterns, to recognize those patterns, to recognize where those thoughts are coming from and how do they happen. Maybe journal them, start jotting them down, start to track them and see what's happening because it's not helping us. It's not helping us a lot. But I have a lot of empathy for that and sympathy because I've been there. I'm still there at times. I do it myself, and my wife even calls me out on it sometimes. So trust me, that's how it is. So I'm going to wrap that up, but I just wanted to bring that one up. I thought arguing for limitations was an interesting topic and one that I've seen repeatedly, and I wanted to bring that to the forefront to let people know about that. But I think, where are we at? We're at about 40 minutes, and I think it's probably a good time for me to start wrapping things up. Anybody have any last things that they want me to mention, to put in the chat? Feel free right now, and I will mention it. Otherwise, I am going to start heading to signing off on here. I want to thank the people who joined me online. That is amazing. I love that you all are listening to me live. When I started this uneven live concept, I didn't know if it would work, but I wanted to do something live from the uneven community at uneven.life, if you haven't checked it out. From the uneven community, I wanted to do something from there where people could be active participants. And right now, it's just me on camera talking. But it's not always going to be that way. Some of these people, especially people who are our guides and our leadership, they're going to start being on camera here too. They're going to start being part of this, and we're going to have more people. It won't just be me talking. We can start doing roundtables. We can start having questions. It's a great environment. It's a great setup, and I think this is really starting to work. I like this. I really like this. I like the fact that I know there's some people right there now I'm talking to, and that's great. And at the same time, I'm recording it for other people later. But Lisa said thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to my team that helps to run Uneven. They are rock stars, every one of them. I'm just amazed that they have wanted to come and work with me. I am very grateful. And to all the members who have come over to give us a chance on this new site and helped us to formulate it, helped us to form it, help us to create it and build it. I think that's been great. I want to close out with one last thing too about those who are struggling right now. I know there's a lot of disasters happening. There's a state funeral for a former president right now. I was watching part of that this morning. I think that president was a really good man, and I'm sad to see him go, but he lived to 100, and that is pretty damn amazing. And I'm very happy for him and his family to have had him around that long. I think that's pretty awesome. But to those on the other coast right now who are struggling with fires ravaging through the city, be safe, listen to evacuations, please be in the clear, and take care of yourselves. We're here, we're listening for you. And if anybody needs some support on that end, please just let us know. Okay. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to those people that are online. And we will see you next week right here on Uneven Live. See you later. Hey, this is Dee. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out our podcast. I do need to remind everyone that this podcast is for informational purposes only and should never be considered medical, psychological, or professional health advice of any kind. If you or someone you know is dealing with significant mental health issues, please seek professional help. Resources can be found in our show notes and on our website at unevenpodcast.com. Take care of yourself, and I'll catch you on the flip side.